Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Honeymoon Mindset with Kids. I am traveling. That's why you hear no intro music. However, we are still here with Kimberly. How are you doing, Kimberly?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Getting some more training in on NLP and how to be a great coach and be able to train others. So,
Nice.
yes. So lots of learning here in the next week and a half.
I'm excited for you.
Yes, me too. Thank you. So
Welcome.
You have today's topic, so I'll let you introduce it, Kimberly.
Thank you. So today's topic is to not have blinders on when it comes to your kids, which is not easy. Every parent wants to believe their kid is perfect, would never do anything wrong. They're little angels, right?
Of course.
But the problem is when you put on blinders, and I'm sure every parent has it to a point. I'm sure there are things that I don't see because I love my kids so unconditionally. But when you put on these blinders and will not look at your children in an unbiased way at all and will not acknowledge any of their quote-unquote faults, it doesn't help them. It doesn't help your relationship with your child, and it doesn't help your child grow and learn how to take responsibility for themselves.
Right.
So this topic came to me because we did have an issue this past week where my kids kind of got into it with some other kids, and it was very hard having a conversation with the parent about it because she would not acknowledge her kid's part in it. And it made me see, while talking to her about it, that her kids weren't telling her any of the things that have happened over the few months that our kids have known each other.
Mm-hmm.
And, she was telling me how to keep my kids responsible, and I was like, I always keep my kids responsible for their behavior. Like, I talk to them about everything that they come to me with. I'm not going to say my kids tell me 1,000% of every single thing they've ever said or done.
Right.
But they do come to me when they're upset, and they tell me I'm mad at so-and-so because he called me a name or he threw something or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, tell me the whole story. How did it get to that point? I don't just say, oh, he threw something at you? All right, let me talk to him. I'm like, I want to know the whole story.
Right.
And my kids will say, well, he was teasing me and I reacted badly and I called him names too, or I, threw something at him. So he threw something back. Whatever the situation in that moment is. And I'm like, okay, well, first I'm going to talk to you and let's sit down and talk about your part in that and how you could have handled it better. Because I will acknowledge that for my kids, the issue we struggle with the most is their reactivity.
Right.
And I know where that comes from. It comes from myself and Matthew. We are reactive people, and it's patterns that have been passed down to us, so I'm not shaming Matt and I'm not saying we're bad parents.
Right.
But we grew up being reactive people. I know for me, I don't know for Matt how he has that pattern of reactivity, but for myself, I got it from my mom. She was extremely reactive. So it's like, you can be just like in a moment, like somebody says something that sets you off. And that's something through NLP that Matt and I have been working on for ourselves and for our kids.
Right.
So I know this about my kids. So I say, like, okay, what is your part in this? Let's take responsibility for you. And they know they can come to me because I'm not going to shame them. I'm not going to blame them. Like, holding your kids responsible for their actions is extremely important. And what's really important while you hold them responsible for their actions is to not shame them or judge them for what they did.
Right.
Talk to them about it.
Yeah.
Because that's why my kids know they can come to me and they can tell me anything that they messed up on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had a weak moment, Mom. I yelled at him. I threw my shoe because I was pissed off. because he was calling me names.
Right.
Like, okay, well, let's sit down, let's talk about that, because that is not an okay way to handle it.
Right.
If somebody is pushing your buttons and calling you names and being mean, you have to walk away. Yeah. If you can't talk to the person about it,
right.
you know. And we talk about it. Do I expect my kids to be perfect with that? No. I know my buttons still get pushed.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, were you going to say something there?
Well, going back to your reactive statement, that almost goes back to prehistoric caveman days where everybody, human nature was to react. That's just a natural human reaction. Because that's the way they all lived. It's in our it's in our DNA as a human being. That's the way our brain is wired.
It is, and it's not an easy thing to change by any means.
No, it's not, and I agree with you. And we as humans, we need to realize that. The other thing I've heard you say is it's a two-way street. There's always more than one side to a story. We as parents, with the blinders, need to take the blinders off at times. We don't want to see what's going on with the kids, and we don't need to know everything.
Right.
But sometimes we need to get all the information. We all don't want our kids perfect. No parent. You're right. No parent wants to see their kid get in trouble or cause trouble. We want to turn. I understand. We want to turn a blind eye, but like you said, that doesn't do any good for the kids, and it creates sense of hope and sense of false hope and security in kids too, which is going to affect them later on in life.
Absolutely.
And I love the fact that you said, we as kids, we need to listen with our hearts when we're listening to our kids and talking to our kids so they do come open to us.
That's what it really boils down to, because I know a lot of parents will be like, oh, I hold my kids responsible. I'll kick my kids' ass if I know they did something like that. Well, then your kid's not going to come talk to you.
No.
Your kid's going to want you to not know what happened.
Right.
Instead of knowing they can come to you and trust you to guide them.
Yeah. As a parent of me that raised 5 kids, yes, I'll say this, and I know you'll probably disagree with me. I spanked my kids. But I made sure I was in the right mind. I made sure I wasn't angry. I made sure it was for good enough. The punishment, the spanking matched the punishment of the consequence of the action or whatever. It wasn't just blatant. It wasn't whatever. And we talked about it. But I also knew my kids, too. This is where you got to know your kids as a parent. One of my kids, he wanted spankings.
What?
He knew. He says, okay, I just got to take a couple walks on the butt. I'm done. I can go play. But now you put that same kid in a timeout? No. He did not like it.
Okay, so you're right. I do disagree with spanking. I'm curious. Do you believe that you could learn something by saying, oh, if I just take a couple whacks, I can go back out?
It was my twin boys, actually. The one twin, no. He just knew, he's like, okay, I can get this, I can go play, go do my toys, go do whatever. But he learned more from sitting in the corner. But now his twin brother, he likes sitting in the corner because he got some alone time. He got to play. He got to be by himself. But now give him a spank it, he learned more because it's like, okay, I don't want to feel pain. I don't want to feel the consequences of having a spanking either. So he learned more from it. So 2 twins, 2 separate different outcomes for handling punishment. And
each kid is definitely different, for sure.
But like I said, it wasn't very often we had to spank the kids. We didn't, my first wife and I, no, we didn't. We tried to avoid it as much as possible, and we said, yeah, that behavior, that action warrants. And it comes down to each one. And yeah, we had to listen to both, get all sides and figure out what was going on. And we made sure we never did it out of anger. So, and sometimes, yeah, we said, nope, then we calmed down. It's like, well, let's think about this as parents. Now we're overreacting, and we just talked to them, and we went from there. So, no.
Okay.
No, but
I completely agree that each kid is different and different things work for each kid.
yeah.
My personal belief is that there's never a reason to physically put your hands on a kid in a negative way, even if you say you're not doing it from anger.
Right.
I don't think there's ever a reason to hit a kid.
Yeah.
I am not saying I am perfect. I am not saying I have never reacted badly. I'm not saying I have never done it. It's not how I want to raise my kids, and it's been a very long time since I've been working on my reactive patterns.
Yep. No, and I understand that. There's different ways of raising kids, and there's different, but you gotta have a legitimate reason behind it. And no, we try to do that as little as possible, like I said.
Right.
So.
And it was a different time,
yeah.
Like I know when I was growing, like your kids are much older than mine, and I know when I was growing up, I wasn't spanked a lot by any means, but that was like the norm.
Oh yeah, I remember those days. But that's what I also said too. My first wife, we didn't turn blinders to the kids. We listened to all sides.
Right. And that is definitely the point of this.
Yeah.
Sure. And I appreciate that you didn't just, if you're... I just can't stand when somebody would say, like, my kid would never.
Right.
Really?
No.
Are you sure about that? Because how well do you know your kid? Do you sit and talk to them? Do you give them a chance to tell their side of the story? Mm-hmm. Is there a reason they reacted the way they did?
Yeah.
Would you have reacted the same?
And that's the other thing I know with Beth's boys. They still talk to us about anything and everything because we've listened to them. We've created that space.
Mm-hmm. And now as adults, they still know you're a trustworthy person.
Yes, they do. So how do we deal with parents who are like that? How do we help them remove the blinders?
So, in this particular situation I was just in, I did my best to just keep saying, I understand your concerns. I am speaking with my children. We are talking about different ways it could have been handled. We are talking about why, the way they reacted was not okay. We are, having discussions, and we're talking about how to handle things better in the future. But this particular parent wouldn't let it go, wouldn't just say, okay, you're taking care of it. You know your kids better than I do. She just kept coming back with, well, this, and this, and, I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but...
Right.
And I did my best to not bring up any past situations. It did come to a point after about 40 texts that I was like, look, this has been going on for a long time. Your kids have threatened my kids too. Your kids have thrown things at my kids too. They get out there, they're wrestling, they're playing. Sometimes things get out of control. They start, my kids aren't used to being called names. So when somebody's teasing them a lot, they react negatively to it. I'm not justifying their negative reaction. I'm just saying I know, my kids aren't around people who tease them very often. And if they are, sometimes, some of my family members are real sarcastic, and they'll tease them and be like, hey, look, I don't talk to my kids that way. Mm-hmm. They don't see that that's a joke, and they're taking it seriously. So they know, okay. But, so I just said, this is on all parts. And eventually, at first, like I said, she was like, well, how come I never heard of any of these other situations? And one of the things she had said to me when I met her was that she doesn't allow her kids to come to her with issues because she's not a referee. They need to work it out themselves. And so I was like, well, that's probably one reason. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, I didn't mean with other kids. I meant between themselves as siblings, which I understand that's what she meant, but that's probably not how her kids see it.
Yeah,
her kids probably are like, well, if we're not allowed to say my brother's bothering me, I probably shouldn't say the kid down the street is bothering me.
Right.
And then I said, not sure exactly, why your kids aren't telling you about it. I didn't say this, but my guess is because they're used to you saying, don't come talk to me.
Right.
But, so I just handled it that way, and at some point, she was like, well, then I'll sit all the kids down. At some point, she acknowledged that her kids were doing things too, but it was very much like, well, then I'll sit them all down and I'll put an end to this shit, but in a very, like, kind of bullying, negative way. And I was like, no, Matt and I will continue to talk to our kids, because we don't talk to our kids the way you do.
Right. No, I agree.
I'm not going to make my kids scared of somebody.
Yeah, each parent needs to be responsible for their own kids and talk to them in situations. Yes,
exactly. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, if I walk up to a situation, because there's been plenty of times that I've, gone over to the playground to check on all the kids, my kids, to see how they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and I've walked into situations where there's teasing going on, and I've pulled my kid aside, and they'll tell me what's going on, why are you upset? And then, because I'm there in the moment and I'm the only adult, I have said to the other kid, like, hey, it's not okay to laugh at people, or it's not okay to tease them and make them upset like this.
Right.
Could you please stop? You see it's upsetting her or him. Why don't we stop that?
Yeah, and I agree that in situations like that, you need to do something as an adult. And
right.
Even talk, how would you like that if that was done to you?
Right.
Have them
Exactly.
put that perspective back on, of course not. So why do you do it? Well, because, okay, just remember, if you don't like it, then don't do it to others. Treat others the way you'd like to be treated, the golden rule.
I've said that to my kids so many times.
Yeah. I know it's hard to remember in the moment, but...
And yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, some of my kids are better at walking away than others. Every kid is different, like we keep saying.
I would say...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, with the other parents, if you're dealing with a parent like that, sit down and talk to their parent. So why do you think your kids don't come talk to you? Are they scared of you, or is there something there that they don't want you to know? Or how do you handle it when they do tell you something? Help that other parent to see what they're doing, like you were doing in your conversation, to help them view it. You're not putting them down as a parent. You're trying to help them figure out the situation so that they can have a better relationship with their kids.
Right. No, I think that would be wonderful. I don't think every other parent is open to having that conversation, unfortunately.
Oh, right. Yes.
I mean, I think if somebody was willing to have that conversation, absolutely. I think, unfortunately, a lot of parents who can't see their kids' faults certainly won't see their own, or won't admit to their own or take responsibility for their own.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know why my kids are reactive. That comes from me, which comes from my mom, which got,
right,
goes down the line to the cavemen. But some people would be like, oh no, I'm a great mom, screw you, and take it defensively, no matter how pure your intentions are of, well, could you think about why your kids don't talk to you?
Yeah.
Can you think about how you react to them when they do?
Mm-hmm.
And I did try to be, adult about it and not be like, well, I know why your kids don't talk to you. Have you heard the way you talk to your kids? I would never say that.
Right.
But I did, turn it around because, when she was saying, how come I haven't heard of this? I know she was saying, how come you, as the other parent, haven't come to tell me? But I wanted her to see, why don't your kids come tell you?
Yeah, no, you're leaving it as open a question for them to find out the answers.
Yeah. Plant the little seed.
Right.
Because I know this person would be very reactive if I just said it flat out. But plant the seed of, why don't you think about that?
Right. No.
And while I am not happy with the way my kids behaved that day, and they know it, and we're, having continued conversation about it, at the same time, what I took from the situation is I am so happy that they feel comfortable coming and telling me when they're at their worst.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for listening to this episode of Honeymoon Mindset. Tune in next week for the second part of what it means to take the blinders of your eyes as a parent. I was back.